Hello, my lovely people of the internet. Today we're talking about abilities. Kind of important. And as of time of this recording, we don't know the abilities for the new megas yet from Pokemon Legends ZA. For the base game today, because there's two of them, many of them. I want to cover them all, and we're gonna do this in Dex order, because I'm too lazy to do it differently. So we're gonna try to keep it brief, because I don't want this to be half an hour long. And I'm going to talk about the abilities that I think are likely. I'm not going to talk about like stuff like Wonder Guard or Parental Bond or other realistic stuff, but with some of them, I want to speculate about some signature abilities because that is something that Megas like to do. So let's start with the Fable, the one that stays with Jacint, pretty big fans, and one of the few that gets a new typing among the new Megas. But let's work off of the base stats because I think that is one of the most important ones. Because that's what I talked about. Mega Clefable is one of those candidates where I'm like, I think they kind of need to give it a pretty sick signature ability and a new one at that. Because, I mean, the stats don't look bad until you remember that Megas take the Mega Stone as an item to hold and as a once per battle resource, which is why you can't really judge them on the same metric as other Pokemon. And the thing about Mega Clefable is, this is just, stat-wise, it's a marginal improvement on Togekiss. Which begs the question, why would you play this if Togekiss exists? If Togekiss doesn't take your Mega slot, and obviously the comparison is even more apt with the flying type being. So Mega Clefable is one of those things where I'm like, okay, we're not gonna mess around with anything. We're just going to consult the Pokedex entry for a potential signature ability, because I'm grasping for straws here from the get-go. And the power of the moonlight, control over gravity, makes me think, okay, maybe they're gonna do something silly with this and make it set gravity upon Mega while maintaining its ground type attack immunity because it controls it. Because I'll be very honest, unless it has something ridiculous like that, I think it's gonna be hard to justify Mega Clefable in a competitive environment where you would have alternatives like Togekiss with the redirection, because 135 sounds really, really good as a stat until you remember that you don't really have an item, so you do miss out on a lot of damage. So, I'll be honest, with Clefable, I'm gonna keep it short and sweet. This thing needs to do something ridiculous, and that's like the only thing that came to mind. Because I did give this a lot of thought. Next one, Victreebel. I was so excited when that one got announced because I was like, oh man, this is such an old Pokemon where the Gen 1 stat spread didn't make a whole lot of sense back then and they just were messing around. And I was like, okay, you can just min-max it to high hell and back. And then this is what we're looking at. This makes me furious. Because what do you mean the speed doesn't change at all? If it would have been losing some speed or gaining speed, I would have been happy with either, because it would have just gotten away from this awkward set of 70, where you can't really do a whole lot with it. But no, they give it... They waste like more than half of the mega stats it gets, more of those 100 base stat totals that it gets on both attacks, and it's so frustrating. So I know I'm gonna repeat myself again because I genuinely think if you want to make this thing playable, it needs a ridiculous signature ability. In this case, give it corrosion times 10. Like I've been saying it, this thing needs an ability where it hits steel type Pokemon with poison for super effective. Otherwise, utterly unsalvageable. I mean, look at this mess. It's... oh my god, I am so upset. And I know one of my locals loves Victreebel. Alright, Starmie. That's the one where we don't have to speculate. It's like one of the two Pokemon where it has 140 extra, and it has a suspiciously high physical attack stat. This one is going to have huge power, and it's going to be ridiculous. Because I want you to remember, 140 is 35 points more than Mega Mawile, which was already dealing ridiculous damage. This thing's Aqua Jet is going to delete stuff. Like, we're going to have a premium new physical attacker, and it's going to be Mega Starmie. Urshifu, count your days. God, I wish. Then the original one we saw. The one where the art style is just a bit goofy. Mega Dragonite. I was initially saying all hell would break loose if this thing gets area late, because I thought if it gets any boost to its physical attacks, that it's going to be too much because of flying type extreme speed. Now I kind of hope they do that. Like, I'll be honest, I just want this to get area late, just because it would still be good, but it wouldn't be as game breaking as we feared. Because one of the things about competitive Pokemon, especially VGC, which is the focus of what I do, I mean, it's in the name, is that there's a lack of good flying type attackers. And then I know it's very lazy, it's very Mega Elements adjacent, but it would have worked. Whatever, next one. I just give it area late out of principle at this point, because I just want to see it still run mostly special attacks. Here's the one that I like a lot. And here's where the personal bias is going to come in. Mega Meganium is very interesting because it gains the fairy typing. But its stats are still kind of sus. I mean, it has good natural bulk. 80, 115, 115, very, very workable. But the fairy typing doesn't help it because it doesn't get Moonblast in ZA. And I have the slight suspicion that Pokemon Champions isn't going to fix that, because I have certain hopes about Pokemon Champions not exactly taking the same movesets from ZA, let's be real. But this is the one where I again want to consult the Pokedex, because it gets this whooping 60 points in special attack. And there is where I'm going to also mention like how the plus moves work in ZA, because specifically mentions Solar Beam, and has the another name being Mega Soul Cannon. Which makes me think that you just need to make this solar power on substances. Because the way it works in ZA is that you don't charge your solar beam. And I think it would be an interesting ability, have it be like flora power instead of solar power. Because this thing basically just needs a niche. Because from these early observations of only Dazzling Gleam as its fairy type move and stuff, it does have a bit of an identity crisis. So I want this thing to have an ability that lets it just fire off solar beams like it's nothing, and have a special attack boost in Sun and have solar beams boosted in Sun, because I think it needs all of that to do something, because otherwise it's just not going to be good enough, and I want the Megas to be viable. The more viable Megas we have, the better, because as someone that has played VGC since 2012, let me tell you, centralized Megas were not fun. And here's the one that has been clowned to hell and back. Mega Feraligatr, the big jaw Pokemon. This thing's stats are ridiculous. Like, I genuinely think this is one of the few Megas where the stats are already going to carry it, which is why I want the thematically appropriate thing. I want this thing to have strong jaw, not because it would be good, but because it would be funny. As long as it doesn't get Fisher's Rend. Because there's no water type attack move besides Fisher's Rend, and there's no dragon type attack move that gets a strong draw boost, which is good because 160 is a ridiculously high stat. So, for the sake of having it thematically be a big chomper, sign me up. Give me the strong jaw Feraligatr that has barely any jaw moves to utilize it. Because I thrive in chaos. Alright, Mega Skarmory. That is the one that, like, you just look at the design, you look at the redesign. I don't want to harp on too long about the stats, because that's gonna make this go way too long, but the speed stat, kind of weird. In a post-Gen 9 environment, 110 isn't what it used to be. But 140 attack, with one specific ability, that would kind of make sense, makes this very workable, and that's just Tough Claws. Give this thing the Life Orb as an ability, and I think it's actually going to do a lot of work. Because, and I need to hark this about this on and on, we need more good flying type attackers. There's some good flying type ones, but in Sword and Shield, you ran Landorus Farian with Fly to gain access to Max Airstream, which was incredibly broken, and the only way that thing could get flying type access, like, because there's one specific Mega that is down this list that is going to make it a requirement to have good flying type damage. But in the meantime, We're gonna see the, what is it, Yukiona in the Japanese mythology? Frostless. First of all, banger design, but also one of my favorites. I think it's a bit of a shame that doesn't get a defense boost, but this thing has actually the opposite of Meganium's Identity Crisis. This thing has a very specific niche. If you look at the stats, this thing is designed to function in snow. So there's two abilities that I can and want to see on this thing. One of them would be Slush Rush and just have it paired with one of the snow setters, primarily Alola Ninetales, to give it the physical attack boost, the speed boost, and the accuracy check by passing blizzards to make this thing an absolute menace. Because 140 is very, very workable on a move like Blizzard with really good speed, so it doesn't necessarily need that. Because the other option is that it gets Snow Alarm itself. If this thing gets Snow by itself, especially in the lower power level formats, it becomes a menace. Because 70-70 doesn't look great until you remember that it gets a defense boost in Snow. Like, this one, it has to be one of those two. I personally think I'd like Slush Rush a little more, because I'd like some dedicated Snow teams. There's always like some engines like that, and those are kind of cringe. Cough, cough, Articuno, cough, cough. So yeah, now this one, they 100% knew what they were doing. This looks like something that I would have done if I was personally biased towards this. And then the last of the starters. Embor. The Pretty and the Reckless, the Chinese one. This one is super interesting to me because, again, the speed increase kind of meh. Ideally, you would have wanted to be slower, really, but it still has a super interesting stat spread. Because this thing, again, to me, works very, very well with something like coaching. Now, I don't necessarily want to pair it with Riolu, because if we consider ZA decks as early champions format, psychic types are going to be scary. But this thing, 110, 75, 110, is fantastic physical defensive capabilities while having a very interesting tapping with Steel of fighting offensively. Makes me think that, oh my lord, imagine this thing next to a coaching bot. The problem is, it's one of those cases where I'm a little afraid what its ability could be. So the funny thing is with how it works. With the Imperiled Allies Pokédex entry, the funniest possible ability for an aggressive Pokemon like that would actually be Friend Guard, to go into like the thematic theme of like it being based off of one of those Chinese stone soldiers. I'm sorry, I forgot the name. And having this theme of rescuing people, Friend Guard Mega Ambo would be degenerate as all sin, and I'd be here for it. Oh, maybe that would be so fun. Okay, next is one of the easiest one. Mega Excadrill, the Gurren Lagann reference. I'm trying to remember the name of the anime, man. But yeah, now this thing is ridiculous. The physical defense going to 100, and the speed going to 103 and 16. Yeah, this is basically just like keep it Sandrush. Like, just keep it Sandrush. This is one of two megas where I absolutely want them to keep the original ability, because it's just way too good. Like, this thing, and send with the good physical bulk, it's kind of terrifyingly good. I think Mega Excadrill is one of those that will probably see a good chunk of play, especially because Steel Ground is just a good, strong offensive type and covers some interesting things. And it also just has a pretty good track record. Sand is always a bit of a scary archetype. Then there's the one where, on a little bit of a tangent, this is one of the best usages of pre-evolution design elements being implemented into the Mega. This is a 10 out of 10 design. But it's so weird because they really said, oh man, we can't risk a Mega Blaziken situation because that was so good. Because this is like one of the steepest drops in stats. Going from 112 speed to 62 means that this is going to be okay in a lower power level format with less of the very, very fast Pokemon. Because 62 with one speed boost, which you can always get. Like, you can pivot it in, you can swap it in, you can just press Protect turn 1. Because the strat is always going to be you have the speed boost and then you do something. Unless you want to run this in Trick Room, which is also an option, but I don't love it as much. Because, well, I mean, to be fair, maybe they wanted to rein it in a little bit because the stat distribution is amazing. It gets a good amount of bulk, a lot of attack, and even more physical defense. Like, they didn't waste a whole lot of stats on this. And they really utilized the lost speed really, really well. Like, this the extra 20 in special attack, sure, whatever. But this is a super interesting one. And, I mean, thematically appropriate would honestly just be battle armor. Don't get any crits, and I'd kind of welcome it because that would make it very funny into future formats where Urshifu is a thing. Like, come on, nah. Like, it's not always about VGC viability. Sometimes you just want to have something nice thematically. And battle armor, not get crit, not the greatest ability, besides in a world where Urshifu exists, but we live in this world, so have it wear this cool armor as an actual thing, or give it a signature ability, I don't care. Then the next one is one of my absolute favorites as a base. The boy Scrafty. With the Swag Hood Banks Naveen. I'm gonna be very honest with you, this is the mega that's like the least interesting, because that's a lot more important. In Legend CA, it finally got Parting Shot as level up move. Like, I'm so sorry, but the mega is like the least, is so insignificant. Like, it's a support, because it's a support Pokemon. It is very much a support Pokemon at heart. The extra bulk is nice, the extra physical attack is nice, but I would always trade the mega for this thing keeping Parting Shot. So, honestly, I'm speculating. You can give this thing another Intimidate. You can give it a special Intimidate as a mega ability, and I think that would be cool. But ultimately, all this screams to me is please maintain Parting Shot in its moveset, and we're happy. Because I want to play this with Porygon and Porygon 2 and Amoonguss. But that's a whole different story. But yeah, Mega Scrafty, kind of one of those where it doesn't matter because it's hard to justify that on a Pokemon that's more for support. And then there's the one that also works. Now, Electros is one of those where I'll say straight up, either you keep Levitate, or you push the Industry Plant Streamer even harder. Because this one's distribution screams to me that they have a plan, because keeping this a mixed attacker is such a waste of stats. 30 in special attack and 30 in physical attack. Like, and it gains speed. That's the part that I hate the most. It's like you give it 30 points in speed to make it this absolutely mess speed tier. That only really works if you have like Tailwind and Trick Room options, but it's genuinely so awkward. Which makes me think that if it's not Levitate, it's Levitate combined with something. And honestly, what I want to see, especially with the lack of terrain setters that we got, is an ability where it has Levitate, still sets terrain, but still benefits from it. I think that's the only way to make this a really, really scary Pokemon, because otherwise it's just... it just doesn't seem like a good alternative to even something already existing like Mega Manectric. The whole, okay, it doesn't have a weakness thing is nice and all, but it doesn't do enough to impress me in this day and age. Alright. Chandelier. The lamp. I love this thing. This is also, again, such a sick design. But, again, one of those where I'm a bit unsure what to say. I mean, its special attack is now absolutely ridiculous. I think this is tied with Kyurem White, unless Kyurem White is only 170, but this is an absolutely ridiculous stat. Extra 30 points. The extra speed is kind of okay. It helps it operate in Tailwind situations. But what I want this to do is hit us with a blast from the past. Now, for those of you that weren't old enough to be have a consciousness in Gen 5, originally the coded in hidden ability was Shadow Tag. It's just that Gen 5 Pokemon didn't have the hidden abilities available because they weren't available in the Pokemon Global Link. So I think it would be a funny blast from the past to just give this thing Shadow Tag. I know it would kind of clash with Mega Gengar, but I want to be reminded of a better time. 2012 was a better time than nowadays. So let me be nostalgic. And then here's the one where it's just ridiculous. Mega Chestnut. This thing gonna be the reason why we're gonna need a lot of good flying type ones with flying type moves. Because look at this. Like, they have been wishy-washy on so many of those ones we've seen so far. But this Looks like something I would do if I tried to make him unbroken. It loses speed. It doesn't gain special attack. Its defense becomes ridiculous. While also having an incredibly impressive physical attack stat, it still has those okay 88 HP and 115 special defense. And I want you all to remember one thing. This fella gets body press. Mega Chestnut is Zamazenta Light. I know I'm here to talk about the abilities, but this thing is in the tier of like, it literally doesn't matter what ability it gets, it's going to be ridiculously good. Like, genuinely. At this point, I look at this thing, and I want it to have an ability that is actively harmful to its game plan. Because it doesn't matter what its abilities, you're going to play this in Trick Room. If this gets anything like High-Am Barbs or Lord knows what, it's gonna be quite something. This is again one of those where I kind of want to see it have just something like battle armor, because it basically turns into an armored warrior. I'd be very okay with it. Otherwise, I'm rather scared. Like, it could also just keep bulletproof. Bulletproof would also be a fantastic ability on it, just to tank certain moves. But Mega Chestnut, if this was a tier list, it'd be like, it really doesn't matter. Just give it battle armor, because that's okay, because it then bullies Urshifu even harder. But just don't give it anything too good. Like, I genuinely don't know what to tell you. If it gets something like Pharaoh Iron Barbs, which wouldn't make thematical sense, it would be so over. This thing is evil. And then, they also randomly locked in for this thing. Delphox. They made it 134 speed, 159 special attack, didn't change, no filler stat, and 25 extra special defense, because why not? I want this thing to have levitate. Not because the thing would be good, but because it would undermine the size spam. Because, look, as of time of this recording, we're still playing Reg F and Scarlet Violet. This thing is so much more evil than Iron Crown, because it has a much better offensive typing. What if Iron Crown could just freely hit the steel types of the world? That's what this thing is. And now, with the flying, with the broomstick, broomstick, why am I saying broomstick? I want this thing to have levitate. Because on the one hand, okay, ground immunity, great. On the other hand, no contact with the psychic terrain. Because if this thing gets to abuse expanding force, it's going to be extremely not fun to play against. Trust me. And then there's Greninja, the last of the Gen 6 starters, or how I like to call it, upside down Ash Greninja, because just look at this. This is where they went back to like, oh yeah, let's be a bit more reasonable about this, because it actually has some filler stats. The only difference is that it now becomes ridiculously fast. 142 speed, quite something. Quite something. Very few Pokemon in this game outspeed this thing naturally. And this is again one of those where I kind of think they're just gonna lean into like OG Battle Bond a bit. Because if you used Mega Greninja in ZA, you will remember that plus Water Shuriken turns into a single hit move, which makes me think that, yeah, they are going to do stuff with that. I think they're just going to lean into this being basically Ash Greninja in anything but name. So I can see a special attack boosting thing that changes how Water Shuriken works to make it an even scarier move, even though it wouldn't make sense with the speed boost. But this, first of all, it's a reasonable thing. It gets a little bit of bulk. It gets a lot of extra offense. But yeah, depending on how the Water Shuriken interaction works, because I don't think they're going to do that just as a water thing. I kind of want to believe that they have plans for how those Pokemon are going to work with the games with abilities, with the traditional fighting system. That makes me think, yeah, Mega Greninja, yeah, you're just gonna have it's some Battle Bond adjacent thing. The exact details I am not too sure about. We're going to see that hopefully very soon. And then there is this thing. You know, I heard this was a Mega Pyro. I caught a shiny little Leo on my playthrough of ZA. And then there's this. This makes me angry. This is a joke that didn't land. They just said, let's put 20 across the board. I'm telling you, you could give this thing Drought, and it would still be bad. I don't know what they would need to put on top of that to make this land. But this is a joke that doesn't land. Give it Drought and Solar Power combined, and it would be barely comparable to Megazord Y. I'm just gonna go ahead because that made me unreasonably angry, which makes it perfect that the next Pokédex entry is the main girl, Eternal Flower Flood. First of all, beautiful stats, made even better. And funnily enough, this is the Pokemon that made me wanna make this video. Because there's one unassuming ability that would make this Pokemon very, very scary. Because this is already screaming a coal mine setup mon to me in the first place, because it has really good OK bulk and enough speed and enough special attack to invest most of its stats into its physical defense to make it really scary. But what's really the kicker here is Light of Ruin. Because Light of Ruin is a fantastic option for damage, but it comes with the very obvious drawback of recoil. There's one ability that I want to give it to this Pokemon, and that's Magic Guard. Now, why that? Now, Magic Guard prevents all passive damage, effectively. And there's one aspect of Magic Guard that has been really underutilized, with the exception of Life Orb Clefable, but that's a Smogon thing, and we don't do single battles here. And that is recoil. And that includes move recoil. So what I want to see is a Magic Guard Mega Floette that doesn't get recoiled from Light of Ruin, because that would turn it into one of the most ridiculous nukes after just one command setup, and it would allow for some funny things like burning or poisoning your own Mega Floette to try and dodge something like a Yawn or a Spore from opposing Pokemon, since you don't even get the drawback of the damage. Which, let's be real, very, very funny. And then there's other things like Sand Chip and a Leech Seed, which is interesting. And then we go from a really good stated Pokemon to the one where the only good thing about it was the PR. Because Mega Malamar is the same joke as Mega Pyro, in my opinion. And it gets even worse the second time around. Like, this is, again, one of those where I want to see it have a signature ability, because this is unsalvageable by stats alone. This would be a bad Pokemon if it wasn't a Mega. This is so ridiculously bad. So I'ma say it. You're gonna do the whole upside down thing with Mega Malamar and just make it set Trick Room on Mega Evolution. Just make it the TR bot, where you play it only for this ability, where it does little else. Because it's the only way I can see this mess of a Pokemon work, and now I want to stop looking at this. Then there's Barbarical. I'm gonna be honest with you, I am willing to fully lean into the JoJo reference. Also one of the only ones of the new Megas, I think the only one even, that changes the typing. Not add one, change. But yeah, the base stats super interesting. 140, 130. Very good Pokemon in terms of like offensive and defensive stats. I think it's going to be quite interesting. Now the quote-unquote boring part would be to just have it be Tough Claws. But Tough Claws doesn't really benefit the rock typing of it. So I just want to go into the thematic thing. Because this Pokemon, I mean, look at it. This is a JoJo reference. So you give it enough focus to make it the Aura Farmer, which would actually work as an ability, because no flinching and no attack drops from Intimidate would be really good, and you call it a day. Because you can't stop the Aura Farming, as the young ones call it. And boom, Dragalge. This one is scary. And not just because the Pokédex entrance makes it a Cancer Ray. Look it up. That's what it says. Making the regenerative power cells run wild. That's cancer, kids. Yeah, this one, just stay adaptability. Just stay... Like, adaptability is the one thing that fan games give Pokemon to make them broken. And then there's the Lucha Libre. I'll be honest, Mega Hawlucha makes my head scratch, because you can't run Unburden on it anymore. Unburden with a Mega doesn't work, kids. Remember, the Mega Stones are items that you hold that stay there even after the Mega Evolution. So the only thing from the existing abilities that made sense to me was Arena Trap. Because you're a wrestler. You have your opponent trapped in the arena. Just watch the first Spider-Man movie for reference. The one with Toby. A good one. And just have it Arena Trapped because that's the closest thing to a wrestling reference. Otherwise, give it a signature ability and call it a day. Then here's another one that, I love it. Mega Drampa. Look at this beauty. This is a less extreme version of Mega Chestnut, in my opinion. It's so fantastic. 160 special attack, 110 defense, 116 special defense on 78 HP, and it still has this wonderfully low speed of 36. Now, the obvious thing to give it, because the Pokédex literally says it gets invigorated and regains its youth, is Regenerator. And don't get me wrong, that would already be ridiculous. Like, a Pokemon with this kind of bulk, in a Trick Room balance kind of team, boy, howdy, infinite health. But how about a signature ability that becomes a backdoor pilot for a new Gen 10 mechanic? Look, all I'm saying is the Pokédex entry says it manipulates the atmosphere to summon storms. And what if we utilize the new category of wind moves from Scarlet Violet? That's being utilized by my good Bramblegast. I love that tumbleweed. And make it set a new weather, it's called Storms, that interacts with wind moves. Now, wouldn't that be something? But yeah, either that or Regenerate. I'm fine with either. I'm going to love using Mega Drampa. I think that Mon looks sick. And now, for the one Gen 8 rep until we get to the DLC. Spellings. We're gonna have this one be a simple end, because there's one simple ability that I see for it, and it's simple. Just make it turn into Dondozo for all I care, because if Dondozo is allowed to exist in the current form that it is, you can give this thing simple. Would be funny. I don't even think it would be that broken, because it would be very susceptible to Intimidates. So yeah. Now, I don't even care about logic, I don't care about anything else, I don't care about the ramifications. Give this thing simple, no retreat, it has to set up, it has to be in there. I genuinely think with all the other stuff that exists in Pokemon these days, that'll be okay. And bonus entrance, Zygarde. I'm not going to talk about it too much because it's probably not going to be illegal for a while, but Mega Zygarde is ridiculous in terms of stats. But, oh, sorry, I had something else prepared. But the way this thing works with how you activate it, I don't know about the ability. I mean, it would probably just turn to Aura Break. But to me, Mega Zygarde is a bit convoluted to bring out. So when I see this, I see an anime, Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime filler season card that got turned into a real one that's way too convoluted to play. When I see Mega Zygarde, I see this. I see Timaeus, the Knight of Destiny. Because that's what I like to compare it to. This one on the end is just a little rant, and I thank you very much for watching. I am going to see you in the next video. Bye-bye.